Good morning, or maybe I should say good evening, to Doctors Tom Lonsdale on the right and Dr. James Clarke-Williams on the left. I'm Barbara, your host and raw feeder with Canines Over Coffee, and today I have the pleasure to speak with Doctors Tom and Dr. James, who are very well-known vets in the raw feeding space. And you may be able to tell that Dr. Tom is a retired vet, but he's still very much active in promoting a healthy way of raw feeding our pets. Dr. James is still actively seeing pets in his clinic or at a friend's clinic in Sydney. And today I would like to talk to both of them about what they believe is the main ingredient in a raw dog food diet, the raw meaty bone. Now, if Dr. Lonsdale could start talking about the importance of raw meaty bones, and Dr. James could add his spin on that, that would be wonderful. And just as a little sneak peek, we're going to be covering theoretical aspects, and we're also going to be sharing some practical feeding tips for anyone new to raw feeding who may have some concerns about how to safely feed raw meaty bones. Dr. Tom Lonsdale, if you wouldn't mind talking about raw meaty bones and how that ties into your belief that they help our pets live longer and better lives.
G'day, Barbara. So good to be here. Thank you for the invitation. And well, this is my pretty much sole focus in life, raw meaty bones, since I tumbled to the reality in the late 1980s. And that realization that raw meaty bones offer the key to the carnivore code. It's what drives the wolf pack to run 40 kilometers through the deep snow in order to rip and tear and gnaw at their raw meaty bones. They are absolutely driven to do that. And the modified wolf that you might have at your feet under the table, it's similarly driven that way and is prepared to spend hours upon hours gnawing and ripping and tearing at a raw meaty bone. They're even so desperate that they'll even gnaw at a plastic look-alike bone.
Right.
It is the driving force. It's what they're here for. They've got the 42 teeth in order to rip and tear and chew. It's their obligation to the planet. It's their reason for being. And so those working parts are effectively the interface with them and their environment. And they have an obligation to the environment has an obligation to them, and together they work it out perfectly in the natural state. They do in the zoo as well, in the real zoo, the zoo with bars. Unfortunately, folks operating in a zoo without bars, sometimes at 10 or 20 stories above the street, have not got this message. So that's why we're here today, to talk about the essential element in the carnivore biology, which is the raw meaty bones. Now, you can say, well, what else is there to raw meaty bones? Well, ideally, of course, it's covered with fur, feathers, and fins. That's how the raw meaty bones come in the natural state. But in the unnatural state, you don't have to have the fur, the feathers, and the fins. So long as you've got big, big pieces of raw meaty bones to occupy your carnivore for an extended period of time, most days of the week. And I say most days of the week. It doesn't have to be every day. Can be 5 days a week and 2 days fasting. Indeed, once you're feeding an actual diet of raw meaty bones to animals, they're frequently satiated. And the next thing they're going to do is trot down the garden to bury the remainder, the caching, because it's so valuable that they need to save that for later. So that's what they will do for folks with a garden, and people get upset about their flower beds being scattered far and wide. Well, too bad for the flower bed, but good for your dog. To overcome that problem to a degree, of course, you feed less, and then they'll eat the whole lot. But that's the story. Raw meaty bones is this fundamental element. That's what a carcass mostly consists of. People worry about the innards. Right, well, it'd be nice to give the innards, but the truth is they putrefy. If you hunt your deer, your moose, your rabbit, your pheasant, your fish, you can feed those guts naturally as they come out of the animal there and then. But saving those is that they're liable to putrefy and create problems. So the guts was very important, I believe, in the natural state. They're not available in the unnatural state. Doesn't matter, it seems. The real benefit has never been demonstrated. In terms of the other internal organs, again, a lot of my clients never ever fed any liver, heart, lungs, spleen,
Interesting.
or any other part. Never ever. And
their dogs
animals,
their dogs are fine. They do well. They don't suffer from any
really
nutrient
well.
imbalances that you've been able to tell.
No, we've never been. Look, I've been at this for 30 years, probably with thousands of clients over that time. Never ever have we been able to demonstrate, either in our own clinic or in our readings, as to why getting all the way up to a whole carcass diet doesn't seem to matter. In the zoo, my colleagues in the zoo, Pete Litchfield, Neville Buck, they for the most part feed complete with fur, feathers and fins, but their animals are captive, and they again don't need the vet. So just back to this raw meaty bones thing, why is it the essential extra ingredient? Well, okay, people thinking about this who many, if not all, once upon a time fed junk out of the can and the packet. Stop feeding that. Stop feeding the junk out of the can and the packet. And that's where you get the major benefit. So it's not what you subsequently feed that's going to add the major benefit. It's stopping doing the bad thing. So you bang your head against the wall, bang, 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 and take an aspirin, but keep banging your head, you'll still be in trouble.
Fair enough.
Your better thing, stop doing the bad stuff. Right. Chuck out the canned, the dry straight away. You've got a 50% improvement in the health of your captive carnivore, your dog, cat, ferret, or whatever. Then, on the internet is swimming alive with different recipes and menus and alternatives. As long as it's raw, it will add another 10 or 20% improvement to your carnivore's health. Good. That's a good thing. But unless it's raw meaty bones, it won't get that last 30 to 40% improvement that you're looking for in the teeth. Because that's where the medicinal benefit lies. So if you ground up those bones and fed them, stop the can, stop the dry, gave them raw meaty bones ground up, you would see an improvement. But you would not see the full improvement that you would be looking for from the medicinal point of view. And it's that ripping and tearing at the raw meaty bones that stimulates the brain chemicals, which in turn speak to the immune system, which tones the immune system. Simultaneously, they're cleaning their working parts. Simultaneously, they're telling the stomach something's on the way down.
That's
now
very
you can.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but I did not realize that the mental stimulation had an impact on the immune system as well.
Yes, there are receptors on white cells for endorphins, and the two work in conjunction. Now, I don't have the chapter and verse, but you can Google it. Absolutely. You just go out there and Google the benefits of exercise for humans.
And the stress affecting
That's
the immune
true.
system
Okay.
too.
I understand that parallel. That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's absolutely, and that's what these animals are prepared to do. They are so driven to do this because it's what fits them in their ecological niche, where they're working really hard to get the prize of the raw meaty bones. So that physical exercise, chasing it, chewing, killing it, devouring it, all stimulates the brain chemicals. And then you have the feeding frenzy, that euphoria that you see with the successful champions of the hunt, as far as they're concerned. And of course, the wolf pack will then sound off and howl and telling all the other wolf packs to watch out because they're the dominant pack. It's very, very important, all of that. And there's a web group all about enrichment. And I've written to them and said, well, look, the primary enrichment is to feed raw meaty bones. That's the enrichment they need. And of course, Carol and Tony O'Herlihy, they hosted me in 2002 in the UK about raw meaty bones, and we gave lots of lectures. And they report that they were dog trainers. They wouldn't even embark on training a dog until it was fed raw meaty bones. And then half their job was done. That suddenly you've got a contented animal that's working within its own biological terms of reference. And then they found training that animal was a simple matter.
Mm-hmm.
But having left it on the hyperglycemic mush that didn't satisfy, the dogs would be out of their brains. Hyperglycemic. And so this was and indeed they wrote to the Senate inquiry into the junk pet food pet food industry, as they called it, and wrote all that down. So, and that's in my latest book, so you can read about that. But this is not just some surmise. This is definitely the case. So the effects on the immune system and on the endorphins is huge. And what you find again, the contentment settles upon the animal. So that's why I say feed on the nights and the days you feed in the evening. You can supervise the feast. You can see that the animal's not choking. You can see that it's contented. You can see how much is left over that you've got to put back in the fridge. And then, luckily, your dog will sleep through the night, which is what you want.
Yes, yes, you do. Now, at that point, how do you think that, so you're saying that an animal will stop eating when they're full?
Yes.
And if they don't, how much, now, if they're a gulper, like my dog, Wally, for example, or a greedy lab, who will just eat as long as they have food sitting in front of them, how do you know how much to feed? And how do you possibly take away what's left over, and what do you do with it at that point?
Oh, well, let's start with that, taking away what's left over. That's very, very important. The hand that gives must be the hand that takes away.
Mm-hmm.
You mustn't allow your modified wolf to become a food guarder with associated aggression. So you need to start that out early, because that is the one thing that even the most placid dog you'll find understands the importance of the raw meaty bone and will defend it to the last. So you should get in the way of handing and taking away.
So
but otherwise you ask.
Yes, sorry to interrupt. And just real quick. So I've been feeding raw dog food since 2015, but I started with a pre-made grind because I didn't know any better. And then started giving my, at the time, 2 boxer mixes, Missy and Buzz, raw meaty bones, whole raw meaty bones. And I will say I was a little nervous at first because I wasn't sure if they would instinctually know what to do. Turns out they did. But I also ended up holding one end of the turkey neck. I think it was the very first raw meaty bone that I fed, and had them chew on the other end. And that worked great. I also had the benefit, though, of having adopted them as puppies. And although I didn't feed them a raw dog food diet at the time, I made sure that I would always place my hand in their bowls come feeding time, so that they would be used to me interfering with their eating or touching their food and not, harming me. So how would you say, or do you have a good tip for people to teach that to an older dog? Because many people have older dogs who are thinking about making the switch. I find that the majority of people don't adopt a puppy and then immediately switch them over to a raw meaty bone diet. So what's a good approach there?
Okay, Barbara. Well, look, we've got a zillion questions swirling around here. And dealing with this one about introducing raw meaty bones to an older dog first up. Well, don't go and get yourself bitten. That's very important. And for people who can't control their dog and it is liable to threaten them, well, I'd recommend seeing a dog trainer. And in the meantime, don't deny it its birthright of ripping and tearing at the raw meaty bones. So just chuck them out in the garden and leave the dog to it. Dog will know what to do, just in the same way that the zookeeper knows what to do. Importantly, you talk about turkey necks and such like. Well, that's sort of all right for a middle-sized, small to middle-sized dog, but a big dog, they'll crunch through those in no time. The truth is that, and you shouldn't really be holding on to it in order to control, you chuck it on the ground and leave the dog to it, and they will then take it off to a secluded spot to eat it. That's what they most want to do. They don't need to have somebody hovering over them. And your time's more valuable than that. You don't
That's
want
true. That's true.
Yeah.
I did that just to make sure. I did that initially to make sure that they wouldn't choke.
It would
So it's essentially peace of mind for me to understand, okay, they're fine. They know what to do. So I initially held it and never held it again. Only for demonstration purposes for a YouTube video did I hold it again.
Well, look, I can understand people's anxiety about this. Nearly all anxiety is dissipated once you feed in big pieces. You see, your turkey neck is heavily processed. The turkey was alive once, and then it's dead. And then it's skinned and dismembered and reduced to this small part. All of the things that your dog actually should have been doing itself. If we were to use an Australian expression, fair dinkum, if we were really honest about what we're seeking to do here, we would say, right, well, we've got to find a source of turkeys complete with feathers. The dog in the wild, if it wants to eat a turkey neck, it's got to eat the whole turkey. And I tell you what, for most part, they're not going to eat the neck. That is pretty substandard fare. In Work Wonders, there's a picture of a dog, what appears to be carrying a chicken frame around.
And Work Wonders actually, Work Wonders is one of your books?
The book.
Yes.
Yeah, the back of the book. And yes. It's not. Well, that's it. Yes, it's an early edition. The new edition just got a different cover. Same picture in the ebook. It's a color picture, so you can see this Saluki very proudly carrying what appears to be a chicken. It's not a chicken, I can tell you. It's the chicken skin with the neck and the wings and the feet. But all the innards and inner parts have been eaten out, and it's just trotting around with its trophy, telling the world, what a brave, courageous killer this dog is. That's again, the brain endorphins are getting a real good workout for that dog. So that's the story. So look, we can compensate when we do it half right, and then you perhaps have to hang on to it to make sure they don't choke. But the number one thing is don't feed it so small.
Okay.
And people have a tendency to want to chop things up and make it easy. Right. Well, you double the potential harm by doing that. Because if you give a whole, for instance, turkey neck, the dog has got to say chew, chew, chew 50 times before it gets to the end and then swallows the last bit, which it could get stuck. If you cut it in half, you double the number of small bits that it's going to end up with. You see, they start with the bone, the turkey neck this big. You cut it in half because you think, well, you're going to make it easy or something, right? The dog eats that half, is woofing it down at a great rate, swallows the last bit, and gets stuck. So here we are. We're talking about having got ourselves in a bit of a bind. I don't like people to get in a bind in the first place. I'm all for prevention. I want people to think it all through. Don't be in a rush. Think out that they're zookeepers without bars. Think out what the genuine zookeeper does, or think out, better than that, what the wolf pack does. And aim to emulate that as close as you can. Then, okay, they're halfway to understanding what they need to do. Then they go for free to my websites. It's there. Basic feeding information. You don't have to pay for it. It is there on both of them. And you go and read all of that stuff, and you go and see all the TV programs, primetime TV here in Australia in 1993, showing the whole story. That's where the Australian audience got their information. 8 minutes of primetime TV. They didn't speak to me. They didn't read a book. They didn't go to my website. They just got it off the TV. It is there. And take confidence. And you will see the before and after. You'll see dismal, miserable little animals that are in a horrible state. I pull out their teeth, leave them with nearly no teeth, and then chuck them a raw meaty bone and watch them come back to life.
Sir. So you're saying that even dogs with little to no teeth left can still eat a raw meaty bone?
The lowest number of teeth that I've left in a dog and known that dog to rebound in health and vitality was 5 teeth left.
Wow.
5 out of 42. So all the rest gone, 5 teeth left. Now, that's fine, because if there's 3 teeth in this jaw here and 2 over here, that's fine, because it works those teeth against the gums in the upper jaw and rips and tears the raw meaty bones, chicken bones for the most part. These are look, these chickens are only 5.5 weeks old. There's no hard bone in there.
That makes sense. Okay. So young chicks, ideally.
Pardon?
Feed young chicks, ideally.
Sorry.
So younger chicks are going to be a little softer than, for example, your rabbit head, right? So don't give a dog who only has 5 teeth left a rabbit head. Give them a younger chick with softer bones.
No, I wouldn't aim to do that.
Okay.
No, indeed. No. I would still, by way of feeding that dog with only 5 teeth left, I would be giving it chicken to eat, but I would also be giving it a lamb neck, a kangaroo tail, a sheep's head, or whatever, and leave it to gnaw and chew and get all of those endorphins and all of that cleaning by having to work rather harder. You want them to use those teeth, and that's when they're fulfilled. Let them fulfill themselves with a big raw meaty bone, a bone that they can't eat. Doesn't matter. They can, just getting the meat off is what they need to do, the meat and the tendons, and spend all that time there. So there we are. So, for the folks listening to this, well, number 1, great, thank you, welcome. Number 2, look, Mr. and Mrs. Caveman knew this stuff. They didn't have no TV, internet, writing instruments, or anything. They just lived in the cave, and the antecedents of your modern dog were lurking outside the cave, and they just chucked out the remainder of any carcass. That was all they had to do. And that's all that was done for millennia, until Jack Sprat and Charles Cruft got together in 1860s in London and decided that they were going to con everybody into feeding their canine companions on grain. So it was on winter wheat, beef blood, beetroot, and that was it. Yeah, beef blood, beetroot, and wheat.
Yikes.
And that's where the initial junk pet food came from. And simultaneously, that's when the big push to encourage the ownership of the modified wolves came about. Because at the same time, they developed pedigree dog shows and popularized the whole thing. So they ended up with a very big population. All of the dogs were sick, but nobody knew. The dogs couldn't speak. You can see pictures of the horrendous state of some of those dogs' mouths back then, and have been ever since. So the cruelty and suffering, that's what had me wake up in the late 1980s. That was the thing that finally triggered this terrible realization and this terrible affront to my conscience. I was distraught that, you know, I'd been recommending the wrong thing, and that these animals had suffered under my care for way too long. I graduated in 1972, and it was the late 80s. So it was about 18 years before I woke up. I've
Wow.
been talking to people and telling them wrong for 18 years. But I then vowed never again. And then I started to research this whole thing, and then found that it was a massive story. And the science behind it is humongous. Once we crack this and demonstrate how the raw meaty bones are key to the carnivore code, the whole veterinary, medical, biological science should be transformed, because the messages inherent in that are just humongous. If the raw meaty bones have this amazing medicinal effect that affects all animals all of the time, and yet they patented penicillin and aspirin that treat only a few things, not very effectively, then this message that I've got about treating all, in the Nexus magazine, it's on my website, it says, we discovered that some of the most difficult or impossible to treat conditions just melted away when we pulled the bad teeth and changed the diet to raw meaty bones. This was the miracle preventative and miracle treatment all rolled into one. The implications of that are massive, but unfortunately hugely suppressed and ignored. But you can find all about it on my two websites.
Yes, and we will definitely, or I will link the websites and also links to all your books in the video description below this video right here, so folks can see that. And you know, I think one of the biggest takeaways for me personally is that even dogs with just bad teeth that had to be removed and only have a handful of teeth left in their mouths can eat raw meaty bones. Because so far I've been recommending to people who've asked me about this, well, buy a meat grinder, grind your raw meaty bones, and operate in a ground way. So I'm going to, well, I just educated myself, learned that's wrong, not the right thing to do, and I will, I guess I'll have to go through my blog posts and edit that.
Phenomenal. Should I jump in now and say that's very true for all these animals that unfortunately had to lose teeth and whatever. But the important thing is the very next day after they're waking up from their anesthetic, that's when you start your raw meaty bones. In fact, our clients, when an animal comes in with a bad mouth, and they all do, they've all got a stinky breath, which is poisonous gases that are going to the heavens, but the poisonous juices are being absorbed into the system. So you know that, and you say to your client, well, look, you came here not to consult me about your dog's bad breath and rotten teeth, but I'm telling you it's got those things. You thought that he was lame in the front leg and that was a consequence. Well, it's a minor consequence. I'll fix that. That'll be done in no time. But a greater concern is the state of your dog's mouth and the diet. So those two things are doing it untold harm, and I want to fix that. But you're here today on, say, a Tuesday, but we're pretty booked up for the next week or 2 weeks, and that's no problem, because what we're going to get you to do is feed raw meaty bones for that period. And it may well be that in that period, your dog will get a lot better, because the raw meaty bones will fix a lot of that tartar accretion on the teeth and fix the stinky breath. And what we're left with in a week or 10 days will be a lot easier to deal with at that time. But anyway, I digress. My point here is, after we pull those teeth out, the very next meal should be a raw meaty bone. And of course, if you started it already a week or 10 days previous, the dog already knows what's good for it and will be looking for that thing the very next day. So sore, bloody gums that have had all the teeth pulled out, the best thing you can do to heal them up is give them raw meaty bones. They're the miracle
Oh.
cure, the miracle for everything. And lo and behold, you know, it's not unknown for us to pull the teeth out. And then at the exit interview with the client, say, here's your nice dog back, wonderful. Here's your packet of bad teeth. And just let's see what your dog wants to do to this raw meaty bone. Woof. And jump into it. Right there and then in front of the client.
Okay.
Do not hesitate. Do not give soft food, which only prolongs the healing or prevents the healing.
Mm-hmm.
Get into the raw meaty bones. The dog will decide which part of its mouth it wants to use, and it will use it, and it will do the good job.
How interesting.
Trust nature.
Okay.
Cool.
Trust nature.
Okay, dokie. Well, my introduction to raw feeding was when I was very young. My mum used to breed collies and shelties, and she used to feed them raw tripe and other terrible things. And it was my job to go and feed them this foul, stinking stuff, and then have them lick my face afterwards.
Fun.
So I was introduced to the raw feeding at an early age.
Okay.
But then I went to college, and I was brainwashed like a lot of my colleagues were, and joined the practices where you had to follow the practice protocol. And even now, when I'm doing locums, I go to some practices and they don't want to hear my views on natural diet. And so, well, you either keep quiet or find somewhere else to work.
Wow.
But fortunately at Bligh Park, when I joined the sort of practice that Tom had sort of launched and started, and Maze with her blessing, I could be honest and open and tell the truth of what I felt was for the animal's best interest.
Awesome.
So a lot of animals come in with dirty teeth and bad breath, and the owners think that's normal. But just converting them to the raw meaty bones diet often does 50% of the cleaning. So you don't necessarily need to anesthetize them and clean them. A lot of the work is done by getting them onto a natural diet. If there are loose teeth, they become obvious within a fortnight. You can use an ultraviolet light to show where the pus is. You can see the loose teeth, and you can book them in for dental extractions. And as Tom says, even if there's a lot of extractions and you suture the gums with buried knots, they're eating normal food or their raw meaty bones again that night. And there's a huge improvement. Whether they come in for a cough, bad skin, bad ears, bad bowel, anal gland irritation, all these things can often be sorted out by getting the diet right. It's all accumulative, all the toxins and the poisons. And so getting the diet right helps their immune system. They can cope with the normal challenges of life. You also got to get them off all these medicated shampoos that people insist on using on dogs that aren't natural. But still, sometimes you have a dog that's atopic. If you find after feeding him chicken, it has an upset bowel, it has intermittent soft stools or vomiting or flatulence, maybe it's allergic to chicken. Chicken has been used a lot in the commercial diet, and it's had a lifetime up to that point on a diet that his body's been saying is bad for you. They're producing antibodies against the chicken, and that can happen even when it's raw chicken. Yes. So that's when you have to do a change. In Australia, we got the kangaroo, which is an easy option. Where you live, maybe horse meat. I don't know whether they're allowed to give that, or venison. But a total change of meat type can often help with those ones with skin problems, ear problems, bowel problems. But getting those teeth under control, that's 50% of the battle. So many health problems are sorted out by that.
Yeah, let me just touch, sorry to interrupt, Dr. James. Let me just say quickly that I did run into the chicken feeding problem with my dog. Wally can't, he's lying in the back there snoozing after a walk, but he cannot have any chicken. He also can't have any quail or salmon because it makes him really, really itchy. I did not have that problem with my previous dogs, but I do have it with Wally. So I had to try out a few different protein sources. And what works really well for him is rabbit and duck. Rabbit, duck, he can have a little pork, beef is okay too, and turkey works too. Just, so.
It's just like humans, we're all different.
Right.
I'm a pescatarian, a fish eater. My wife's a meat eater. She says it's because she's an O group and I'm an AB, but we're all individuals. I certainly feel very flat if she insists on having a pork belly. The next day I feel under the weather. I love the taste of it, but it doesn't suit my body. And you just got to observe your animals and follow the same thing. If they are energetic, it suits them. If they're lethargic and sleeping off the next day, maybe try to avoid that one. As far as viscera with my own dog, I don't feed it liver, kidney, heart regularly, but once a fortnight I'll give some as a treat, and it certainly loves it. And I get an idea when it's getting a bit fed up with the chicken carcasses. When you put it down, it looks at it, looks at you, looks at it, looks at you, and says, "Is that all?" And if it doesn't eat it straight away, I pick it up, put it in the bag and say, okay, that's it till tomorrow.
Okay. So when you say put it
and-
in the bag, sorry, just for some practical feeding advice here. So you put it into a plastic bag, put it back in the freezer or the fridge, or how does that work?
Well, yeah, don't refreeze it. They usually, I have them frozen, so I get them out the night before.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. I'm a morning feeder, not an evening feeder.
Okay.
Again, I find if I have a big meal at night, I don't sleep well. I work better through the day with a big breakfast. I go all day without stopping for food. And I have a small snack. I have a great night's sleep. So I've treated my dog the same. She sleeps in the bed with me and she seems to sleep pretty good.
Mhm.
She certainly wants to get up early in the morning for breakfast, so I don't sly in. But I give her a meal in the morning. If she hasn't finished it, she goes off the toilet, I pick it up, put it in a plastic bag, put it back in the fridge, but I don't freeze it.
Okay.
Just where we are, it's so hot. If you leave it out too long, she doesn't mind it going rotten, but my wife can't cope with the flies. So
That's fair.
if I don't put it in the bag in the fridge, she'll throw it away.
Yeah, that's fair. I
So,
would do that too, but yeah, okay. Good to know.
but yes, overfeed them. Don't worry about them bolting the last bit. You give them more than you know they can eat.
Mm.
And if it's a whole chicken and they only eat a third, okay, and they wander off, pick it up, put it in the bag, put it in the fridge. I keep it in the bag just so the juices don't drain out over the fruit or the vegetables. Ideally, you want to have your separate pet fridge, I suppose, and the human fridge. I'm pretty. I have a pretty good immune system, I think, having dealt with animals all my life and been licked on the face.
Mhm.
So I don't worry about out of date, past use by date, or contaminated food, or the vegetables being the smell of it. I think that's okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I've lived on worse as a
dogs,
student.
they're wild animal. Well, they're not wild animals,
Yeah.
they're domesticated animals at this point, but that doesn't change their insides, right? They still have the acidic stomach juices, so they can
Oh
cope.
no, what I'm talking about is contaminating the human food with the dog food.
Oh, yes, right. Okay.
I don't worry too much about that, but a lot of people are very precious, and so
Yeah.
you understand, keep that hygienic part. Wash your hands after handling the dog food. Wash your hands after handling the dog. And there's different parts of the world where there are different parasites, so you have got to be careful. Most of the parasites in Australia, I think, are fixed by freezing the meat first
Mhm.
and then defrosting it. But you don't want to freeze it, defrost it, freeze it, defrost it. That can cause problems.
Correct.
So once it's defrosted, I just keep it chilled.
That makes sense, yes.
Um,
And so I guess that would be an initial investment on people's parts to, get that freezer or dog fridge. And I have one too. It took me about 3 years to come around to that idea, but I can't recommend it enough, and I do recommend it all the time. People invest into a raw dog food freezer/fridge combination. It makes life so much easier.
They treat themselves to a camping fridge, and that's a family expense, but they use it for the dog when they're not camping. And when they go camping, they take the dog with them anyway.
Yep.
So that's right.
Yep.
So you got the two fridges, the home fridge and the camping fridge, and keep the dog fridge and camping fridge when you're not camping. Take the dog with you and just keep it in a separate bag when you go. Ice cream, 4 or 5 liter ice cream containers
Mhm.
are great ones to keep the dog food separate from your own bread, your own vegetables, chops, fish, or
Yeah, I do
whatever.
that too. Yeah, ice cream containers, so that's a good tip. Awesome.
And they're nice and square. They stack better than the odd carcass shapes.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you ever get any negative feedback from your patients, the human ones, when you recommend raw meaty bones? Are they all on board, or are some skeptical and take a while?
There's some very hard to change.
Yeah.
You'll talk to them and they say, yeah, we feed him raw meaty bones. Why is he so overweight? We only give him raw meaty bones. You hospitalize him for the day and he pushed out poo with corn, carrots, and a whole load of other crap. And also when you investigate, we do give him smackos as a treat. And think, okay, well, stop those. They're as bad as biscuits as far as the itchy skin and bad ears are concerned.
Yeah.
So many dog treats. If they want to give them a treat, I suggest they get a dehydrator. And as long as they're not allergic to chicken, they cut up slivers of chicken and dehydrate and use that. They know all it has is chicken, no coloring, no preservatives, no other crap.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And fish you can buy it when it's in season. You can get river mullets, sea mullets here, so cheap. And filleting that and dehydrating that. It's good jerky if you want to go bushwalking yourself, but the dogs love it too.
Yeah.
I did have some other notes. Dental extractions, yep, gum sutures. As long as they do that, they can get in there. Getting the teeth clean, offal. In England, we had a thing called New York dressed chickens. Can't seem to get him in Australia.
Never heard of them.
But it's with the feet, heads, and everything was on it, but just the guts taken out.
Oh, wonderful. You know, I've never seen those in the States either, and I lived in the States for
Okay.
over 11 years. I'm back in Germany now, which I'm originally from Germany, moved back here in 21. I've never seen, I mean, you mostly get dressed rabbits, dressed chicken, dressed everything. So at the grocery store and at the butcher too. So
Well, I'm twice as old, 3 times as old as you, so they must have got more food regulations now.
I doubt that you're that old. I'm in my early 30s, gosh, no, I just made myself a decade younger. I'm in my early 40s at this point. So
Okay, well, I'm about twice as old as you. How's that?
I
Nearly
don't,
70.
but yeah.
So yes, healthy teeth. Everything else seems to sometimes settle down. I will often book them in for dental clean extractions, but like Tom says, I get them onto a raw meaty bone before we book them in. It gives you an idea of which teeth the dog's using, which teeth aren't hurting himself. You can often root plane and clean those teeth that aren't dead, that haven't got such erosion that you can see a space between the two roots. If you can clean them up, the dog can carry on using them. If the teeth are loose, if they're infected, there's absolutely no point leaving them in there. I know the dentists say leave the teeth behind because you've got work in the future. I feel I don't think you should put the animals or the humans through that. I don't think that's ethical. I think if it's infected, it's better to remove. Yeah. The body's trying to reject it anyway. That's why the bone's being reabsorbed and the gums are receding. You're just helping it do the job by sectioning the teeth into 3 and removing those pussy roots and cleaning it out and joining the gum together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you talk to people or you're the human human patient, when you talk to them about changing their pet's diet over to raw meaty bones, do you ever send them home with a sample of raw meaty bone? Because I think you have freezers at your clinic, right?
Well, here at Bligh Park, certainly often they come in a litter. We'll give them a package of, the puppies that come at 6 weeks old for first vaccinations, microchips, and they've been feeding them mince. I say, look, they don't need mince. They've got teeth. That's why they're chewing your shoes. Give them these quail frames, give them the spatchcock frames, depending on the size of the dog. If they're only 1 kilogram, we give them the quail ones. If they're 3 or 4, we give them the chicken frames, go straight to that. And the puppies dive in there, even though they've got baby teeth, even if they're beginning to shed their baby teeth, they need to chew. And that's why they're pinching their shoes and chewing them.
Yes.
It's also why they're chewing the owners. So often the owners think that's normal for puppies to be biting their ankles. And I said, no, they want something to eat. Give them something they need to eat, not you. Don't encourage them to bite. Especially if they're German Shepherds. I say, look, there's racism. Chihuahua can get away with it, but a German Shepherd, you can't get away with it biting. You've really got to train that from young to eat food, not people.
That's true. Yeah, good point. Good point. I love it. So I did want to touch quickly on the fact that Dr. Tom is known as the whistleblower vet. And also wanted to tie that into the petition that he started in the UK. Since he has dual citizenship, he can do that. If he could maybe talk about that a little bit and see how people might be able to support that petition.
Well, I also was from the UK, so I've got dual citizenship. So I too have signed the petition. The big thing is vets have been promoting the processed food for ages. They've been aware of how it's been damaging dogs' teeth and skin. I think it's inertia, whatever it is, they're hard to change. They don't want to change old habits. A lot of them may be employed by multinational group chain businesses that have to toe the line of if they have a skin problem, you give them this biscuit. If it's got a dental problem, you give them this biscuit. And so they're not allowed to think laterally. I've got to the age where I don't mind if I upset my employers. There's such a shortage of vets. If they don't want me, someone else does. So I can actually speak my mind to them. The clients seem to appreciate the honesty. And there's some people you can't change. They just can't cope. Even vegetarians sometimes have trouble handling the food. I've had some that have been able to do it for their dog's sake. Other people just can't cope with it. Food bowl, you're talking about the food bowl. Don't bother with that. Put the dog and the bone in the shower recess or in the laundry. Make the laundry their happy place where they're fed. And then when you go out, you can put them in there with a bone, and they're quite safe.
Or they're crate.
Especially if you're in a 10-story crate training. Yeah. It depends on the size of the dog, I suppose. They need a little bit of room to move around.
Sure.
We're so blessed in Australia that pretty well everyone's got a yard. And as long as the dog got too many snakes, it's quite safe to leave your dog out there.
Yeah.
But in crowded countries, yeah, you've got to leave your dog in a secure place where it doesn't bury the bone under your pillow or under the carpet or behind the lounge. Because with the central heating, it'll soon find the rotting mess. So
Yeah, nobody wants
not
that.
setting yourself up to fail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess for everyone living in an apartment, including me currently, used to have a big house with a yard. Not right now. I'm in an apartment with no yard. But I have a lot of tile and a lot of laminate flooring. So I usually just when I give Wally a larger raw meaty bone, he just gets to eat that on the kitchen floor. I make sure, I close the kitchen doors, or I'll put up a baby gate and make sure that he stays in there with the raw meaty bone and does not take it onto the couch. Yeah, so.
That's, avoid problems, don't cure problems.
Correct, yes.
So it's making it childproof, same sort of thing, isn't it? You don't
Yes.
set them up to fail. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, and also a big thing I find, after they've eaten, usually my dog wants to go to the toilet within an hour. So you don't give them a bone and go out for ages. Give them the bone, give them a chance to go to the toilet, then shut them up with what's left of the bone. So you don't have the accidents as well.
Yes, yes. One more thing I was thinking about when walking Wally earlier this morning was actually because I do want to give him I've been thinking about giving him a full-size rabbit because I can't sort those. And my initial thought was, well, if he's going to eat the whole thing, isn't he going to get constipated? But I suppose the benefit of giving a larger raw meaty bone is the fact that there's lots of meat attached, right? So he would not consume more bone than he should. Is that right?
Well, I think it's the type of the bone. I've certainly, Tom very much recommends the wild pig. I've come across problems with dogs that get a bit constipated with the pork bones, but I think that's often people are tempted, they don't want to waste the ham bone or won't want to waste the cook bone. And that's where the hassle is. When it's raw, it's a lot more effort, and it's hard for them to overdose on it. And with the whole rabbit, the natural roughage will help the bowel stimulation. It's unusual for them to get constipated. If they do, constipation is a minor problem. I mean, we still go out in the car, even though lots of people have fatal accidents. It doesn't put it off it.
Absolutely.
Feeding bones, there may be problems, but a lot less problems than the dental, the skin, the teeth, the anal glands, all these other ear problems that dogs have that are coming back once a month for injections, whereas they fed them the right food every day. They could save the drugs, they could save the risk of the toxins and the side effects. Every drug has good effects and side effects, and you've got to make sure the good effects are better than the side effects. Some side effects don't become apparent until many years later. Keeping things as natural as possible, I think you minimize the side effects.
Yeah, makes sense. I think you said that you have a little Doxie, right? Your personal dog?
Disney.
What's his favorite raw meaty bone, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, she's mainly fed chicken.
Okay.
She does love rabbit heads, but my wife can't cope with her walking around with the eyes hanging out. She did like duck heads, but that used to make her vomit, so we've taken off the duck heads.
Okay.
So it's mainly just chicken whole carcasses, frames with the skin on if possible. My wife she likes the legs, I like the breast, so she leaves the wings attached in the skin, and the dog gets what's left, and that frame may last 2-3 days.
Okay, cool. So just to touch back on the protein rotation, which is something that I learned in my raw feeding journey, I was taught that you have to constantly switch out your proteins and rotate between them all the time. Do not just feed chickens, do not just feed rabbit. Feed chicken 1 week, rabbit the next, duck the following, pork the one after that, turkey after that, and so on and so forth. Feed as many different protein sources as your dog can tolerate to avoid creating nutritional imbalances or deficiencies. And I know that Dr. Tom earlier already touched on that and said that's BS. And you find the same thing? You don't notice any nutritional imbalance?
Well, in a natural environment, if you're where rabbits are, all you get to eat rabbits. You don't get to eat trout one day, sheep the next.
Good point.
Bull the next. So they get up, eat rabbits maybe 5 days a week, and a bit of grass maybe.
Yep.
Maybe they chew on some strawberries if they find them, if they get the cravings for the strawberry leaf or whatever. But most of the time they eat rabbits, and they're healthy and happy. I think it's the mothering instinct that if they've licked the plate clean, they need something else, and we've got to give them another treat How about a second course?
Mhm.
But keep things as natural as possible. And if they don't eat it, okay, maybe think about giving them a bit of liver the next day or a bit of heart. But if they don't eat it, usually they're just, again, mimicking what happens in nature. They don't eat 7 days a
Right.
week, 52 weeks a year.
And they
So
certainly
fast days.
don't eat the same amounts every single day, right? So keep it
No.
natural, keep it simple. I think that's a big one that people need to understand, that raw feeding does not necessarily have to be or include a spreadsheet approach, which is also something that I learned. You can do it the simple and the easy way, and you don't have to be a nutritionist. You don't have to take classes. You know, just get the basics right, and pass your dog a raw meaty bone.
And every animal is an individual like humans. So if it's a dog that metabolizes well and gets overweight, don't feed it so often. You can still give it more than you eat in one day, but maybe just feed it every other day. There's a 2-3 ratio, is it 2-3 diet or whatever? We eat for 2 days, have 1 day water, eat for 3 days, 1 day water, and helps metabolize the human fat stores. And it works very well for dogs too. If you can cope with those pleading eyes and the guilty feeling.
Yeah,
So again, another reason not to feed them in the same room you eat.
yes, that's a good point. Good advice. Yeah, Wally is very good at giving me the eyes. I swear he has lab in him. Sometimes I feel like if he could eat all day, he would, but then again, I haven't tried that yet, so I would have to experiment.
Well, it's telepathic wanting attention. People can't cope with this. They don't need to feed every time they come for attention. Just scratching a dog between the front legs and saying how great they are is often all you need to do, and they're happy with that. You
Yeah,
don't have to give them a treat.
right.
Again, I think it's mother love. They look at you, they need feeding. Guy says, okay, you want to go for a walk? So we take them for a walk rather than give them food. It's a different approach. The dog just loves any attention.
Yes, and that's
Food is a treat,
yes.
but attention's what they want.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I'm a former professional dog walker, and gosh, I had so many overweight clients, both human and a
Patience.
dog, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's exercise is such an important part of having a healthy dog. Well, and cat too. I also had very many
And human.
cats and human, yes. Yes. So nutrition is important, but exercise, physical and mental exercise is important too. So I yeah, completely agree with you there. So I was wondering if Dr. Tom would like to say a few more words about his petition and how people could possibly
Yes.
help spread the word about
Sorry,
that.
I got distracted from that, didn't I? Here's Tom.
That's great. Thank you, Dr. Tom. So
Hello, I've been here listening, and that's great and wonderful. So terrific that James is talking to you too. You'll have to talk to Dr. May. I spoke to her earlier today. She's now the boss of the local practice here. She threw me a lifeline, bought my practice, and enabled me to go off and campaign, write the latest book, Multi-Billion-Dollar Pet Food Fraud, Hiding in Plain Sight, that tells people about the massive corruption that's been allowed to flourish in plain sight, because the regulators of our profession have been in the pay of the junk pet food industry. In the UK, the veterinary profession is regulated by a mob called the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons. They operate by a royal charter from way back. And it's said that they can make the rules for vets and that they're an honorable bunch and that they'll do wonderfully well. The truth of the matter is, they, and not just asleep at the wheel, they have been actively involved with the junk pet food industry and the veterinary schools, and have deliberately downplayed the needs of the biological needs of the carnivores and promoted this other. So with that in mind, I launched a petition on the 30th of November. So it's been running now for almost 2 weeks. And people can go to the House of Commons website and click on the link to the petition to investigate the pet food industry involvement with the veterinary profession. It's not exactly the wording, but I'm sure you can find that and find the link and go there. I'll cough for a moment if you don't mind. Importantly, the House of Commons actually wrote that petition. I sent 2 versions in and they rejected both because I was too demanding, I suppose,
Okay.
of what the authorities should do. Anyway, they watered this version down, but in the middle of this version, they recorded the fact that there was what's called an early day motion in the British Parliament in 2004, when 55 members of Parliament said, enough is enough, and this has got to be looked at. This makes no sense for vets to be recommending junk food to their patients, and we call upon the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons to do something about it.
Right.
That was in 2004, so that's almost 20 years ago, isn't it? Right. So now we're going to ask them again. And so it's fairly pointed. It's going to be to the decision makers, the legislators, the lawmakers, to reconsider whether the vets are the best people to control what's going on, because they haven't played fair.
Right.
And they've feathered their own nest. So they've got vast population of very sick dogs with rotten teeth and stinking breath, and cats in the same or worse condition, that they recommend that you go out and brush their teeth with a toothbrush. This is absolutely ludicrous. It's abominable. It's immoral. It's illegal. It's against cruelty laws. It's against consumer laws. You're not allowed to deceive your customers with false and misleading advertising, but that's what they do. And there's another aspect to this, that all these dogs are completely out of their minds with grief and misery because of the junk that they're fed and can't clean their teeth and so on. So they clean their teeth on the neighbor's toddler. Yes.
Bites. Yes.
Yeah. The dog attacks in large part can be attributed to this abomination. So please, people, anybody watching, please, if you're from England or UK, I beg your pardon, I shouldn't be, so parochial, from the UK, England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Isle of Man,
any of the colonies.
And if you've got a British citizenship, you can sign it wherever you live. If you live in Britain, it doesn't matter where you came from, you live there, you're entitled to sign this thing. And if you're none of those things, don't be put off. Please share the petition so that people all around the globe can see what needs to be done in order to improve the health of our patients, the pets, which will improve the well-being of the people and start to restore the balance for the natural environment too. The knock-on effects are colossal. Now, I know initially people don't see that, but once they delve in and look more deeply, go to the 2 websites, all the information is there. And I can't say these things if they're untrue, because of course I get myself in a lot of trouble. So that's why I can say with absolute confidence the same thing that we've been saying for 30 years. So please, everybody, go to the website, hit the sign here, and if we get 10,000 signatures in the 6-month period,
Which
then the
ends
government
on
will
which ends on May 30th in 2024, by the way. Just wanted to add that.
That's right. But there's no time to waste. I mean, we have to get onto it now and get a movement going, because if we wait until the last minute, won't succeed. We're at the moment today about 380 signatures in 12 days. So, well, that's not enough. We need 55 signatures a day if we're going to make that particular difference. We'll continue to campaign behind the scenes anyway, and I'm going to stand for the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons again. For 24 years, 24 consecutive years, I stood on this very issue. Nothing else, just this. So I narrowed it, and I'm saying I'm here to join the College of the Royal College, the Council of the Royal College, on this very central issue of it's immoral, illegal, unethical and very unwise to keep poisoning your patients, and you should stop doing this. And
I
for the
applaud you
24
for
years,
I applaud you for doing that.
well, I tell you, I had lots of different nominators. It started off with my two tutors from the university, Dr. Oliver Graham Jones, who was a very eminent person and the first zoo vet at London University, London Zoo. Arthur Hayward was my pathology teacher. These are the guys that nominated me way back. But they upped and died, unfortunately, because they were old and eventually, and now this year we're going to go back to Roger Meacock and Andrew Stevens, who nominated me many years. But the point that I should make here is that I mostly got between 9 and 11%. You can say 10% of voters would support me. So they would vote in the privacy of their own homes where they could have an electronic ballot and tick, but they didn't do any more than that. So there is a core group of vets, about 450, because mostly there were about 45,000, 4,500 would vote in the election out of a possible about 32,000. So there's 32,000 or thereabout vets in the UK registered to practice there. About 4,500 would vote, and 10% of those supported me for 24 consecutive years. Every year, we kept coming back and saying, look, people, we've got all the evidence. You, the Royal College, must do something about this.
Right.
Yep. And, well, okay. And you say, well, I'm American and I don't know about any of that. No, you're right. But if we can get the first domino to fall in the UK, then there will be a knock-on effect. The dominoes will start to fall. And then we can do huge amount of good for cats and dogs and ferrets the world over. So this is what this is about. It's a moral crusade. It's a legal crusade. It's a political crusade. But it needs support. So terrific, Barbara.
I couldn't agree more.
Fabulous that you picked up on this, because I approached you. That was my first question to you.
Yes, you did.
I said, hi, Barbara. I don't know you. You don't know me. But I tell you what, I've got a request. Can you help me to get the message out about this petition?
Right.
And you very kindly responded.
Of course, it
hence
makes
we're
all
now-
the sense in the world to me, because, you know, I just stumbled upon the whole raw dog food world and didn't realize about proper raw meaty bone feeding for many years. And turns out that at this point, 9 years in, I still learned something new. You know, I had no idea that dogs with only a few teeth left in their mouths could eat raw meaty bones. I had no idea. And, you know, my traditional vet recommended I feed Hill Science diet to my beautiful mixed puppies, and I can't believe that I did that. If there's one thing I would change, it's the diet that I've had my puppies back then, but I can't. So this is my way of trying to make a change and contribute. Unfortunately, I'm not a UK resident, so I cannot sign your petition, but I can talk about it and I can interview you, and I will write a blog post about it as well, and I will embed this video into the blog post, and I will share it in my newsletter that I write every Sunday. So that's my contribution. And if you're an American or, you know, a pet food blogger, raw dog food blogger anywhere in the world, you can do the same too. You can write a blog post. You can approach Dr. Lonsdale. He's very approachable, very friendly to talk to, and interview him. Have him on your social media channel. It doesn't matter where, and you know, share the link to the petition. That's easy enough to do. So it's my pleasure to have had you on, Dr. Lonsdale, and Dr. James as well. Pleasure to talk to you, and pleasure to get to know you a little better, learn about you, both of you. And thank you so much for making the time to talk to people about this important you know, aspect in their pet's health. And it's not complicated. It is fairly easy. Don't overcomplicate things. Don't believe everything you hear from traditional vets and other raw feeders who may be just trying to sell you their spreadsheets. So
I've got another information. I had a cat, old cat, that was hyperthyroid, and we got him, had to buy special biscuits for the thyroid. He was just getting slow, old, stary, not happy. Got him on the chicken, weaned him off the biscuits, and he bounced back and lived for another couple of years.
Wow, amazing.
So the thyroid, it's a key. It's a salivary, related to the salivary glands, and so many thyroid issues I think could be related to diet. So that's another aspect to think of it. Hyperthyroid cats are so hard to live with, and they're not happy. Get them on a decent diet, get that thyroid under control. Helps everyone.
Awesome. Thank you for those final words, Dr. James.
No worries.
Dr. Lonsdale, thank you very much. And I'm sure we will talk to you again at some point.
Work wonders, 7 days a week. Feed your dog raw meaty bones, keeps him happy, healthy and sleek. Work wonders, 12 months a year. Feed your dog raw meaty bones, keeps him full of good cheer. Work wonders at any opportunity. Feed your cat or raw meaty bones, put a smile on the face of your kitty. Work wonders, winter, spring, summer and fall. Feed your pet